Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the regular scheduled Board of County Commission meeting. Today is October 18th, 2022. It's our first meeting since the devastating hurricane has touched our community. And I want to say, first of all, thank you to all the county staff, Roger staff, Richard staff, and all the county employees and all the not-for-profits, the first responders. The law enforcement has been out there the last 3 weeks working with our neighbors from this devastating storm. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today throughout the meeting. I just want to touch on that real quick. First, we can start with a invocation with Commissioner Hammonds. Will you lead the invocation? Please rise. And then we could have a moment of silence and invocation for the loss of our family and friends here in Lee County, please.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning to lift up Lee County and the residents of the county. Father, first we lift up the families of those who perished in the storm. Father, I pray that you will be with them, that your spirit would be with them, that you would bring them that peace that we read about in the Bible that passes all understanding. Father, in situations like this, certainly it is hard to understand what happened. God, I pray that you will be with our county, be with our leaders in our county, from the federal level all the way down to the local offices. Be with our staff and our administration. Help everyone to make wise decisions and to display good discernment in the wake of this storm. Father, we have so much to recover, and I just pray that you will bless our recovery, that you will help us to come back better than we were before. I pray for gratitude for the first responders, for the National Guard, for the Coast Guard, for the urban search and rescue teams, for everybody who came and helped out. God, thank you so much for the outpouring of support we've gotten from the entire country. And Father, we just pray that you'll guide the decisions that we make at today's meeting. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Please join us in pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. So as we rebuild through as a community, every day is a new challenge. It's also a new beginning. This week, the kids are back in school. So we have 3 ceremonies this morning, and the first one is Red Ribbon Week. If I could have the members here from the group come forward, please. The great program we've been supporting for many years here in Lee County, and it's been a great program within the Lee County School District. Deb, come on up forward. If we could just go ahead and stand by the podium here, I'll read the resolution, and then after that, we'll come up for a picture, then you can speak real quick. Thank you. Resolution reads, whereas Red Ribbon Week is the oldest drug house prevention program in the nation. Due to the cause of the tragic death of DEA agent Kiki Camaro, who was murdered by drug traffickers in Mexico City, and whereas hundreds of Lee County students participate in Red Ribbon Week events in schools led by the extraordinary teachers and principals. Whereas for every dollar spent on prevention, $7 are saved in treatment according to the United States government surveys. Whereas prevention is working in Lee County with local prevention programs. Alcohol use among teenagers are dropping 15% in the last 10 years. Whereas families in Lee County show an extraordinary commitment to prevention, the health and wellness of their children, as demonstrated by their participation in prevention programs like Red Ribbon Week and Drug House Odyssey. Whereas 2022 will mark the beginning of the expansion of the Students Against Destructive Decisions, SAD, evidence-based prevention program throughout Lee County. And whereas this year's theme for Red Ribbon Week is Celebrate Life, Live Drug-Free. Now therefore be resolved, the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County proclaim October 23rd to the 21st, 2022 as Red Ribbon Week in Lee County, and ask all residents to join our mission to keep kids drug-free. Duly executed by myself. Thank you.
Congratulations, guys. Come take a picture.
We'll get a picture together. Yep, thank you again. Thank you. Deb, or somebody for the group like to address? Thank you. All right, might as well thank you. If you could go to the microphone and just turn around, faces, and we'll get it on the record for you.
Very good. Well, I appreciate this. This is important to us every year to get the recognition and see that everyone's really paying attention to the hard work we do. Prevention is so, intricate in what we do in the community, whether it's with, adults, children, teens. We go out there, especially after times like this, people, divert back to some bad habits and things. So I think it's important, especially after what we've all been through, just to remember prevention's key. Keep talking to your kids. As I always say, it takes a village, so we appreciate your support.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for everything you do for the kids to keep them safe. The next one is Commissioner Sandelli.
Good morning, everybody. If there's anyone here from the Salvation Army, I think we're going to present this to you when we're finished. So I'll read the resolution and we'll go from there. Good morning. Board of County Commissioners resolution, this has to do with Case Manager Month. Whereas navigating service systems such as healthcare, housing, and behavioral health can be overwhelming for Lee County individuals and families. Case managers fill out vital roles in a collaborative process to assess, plan, implement, coordinate, monitor, and evaluate options and services to meet the client's health and human services. Over the past 2 years, COVID-19 pandemic affected all of us and created many challenging obstacles for human services providers and Lee County residents as well. Countless hours are spent each year by case managers across all government and nonprofit agencies in Lee County, focusing on quality of care, continuity of services, and cost effectiveness. And whereas it is the goal of the case managers to assist individuals to reach their optimal level of wellness and functional capability through advocacy, communication, resource management, and whereas case managers have been recognized for their dedication and compassion each year since October 1999 during the National Case Management Week. Now, therefore, it is be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida does hereby proclaim October as Case Manager Month in Lee County, and urges all of our citizens to join us in honoring this dedicated men and women who serve as case managers, assisting residents to connect to much-needed resources provided by the network of human service providers, duly executed this 18th day of October 2022 by our Chairman, Cecil Pendergrass. Thank you very much.
Bring everybody up.
Come on. Good morning. How are you? Pleasure to be with all of you today.
If you all recognize this is Johnny Councilman Street's little girl here. I remember when she was born. You may want to get a bit tighter.
Yeah.
We got one more for the county photographer in the back there. We'll get one.
Okay, so for my photo, you all need to move in and make a
Just a couple of feet. There you go. Wait a minute.
Okay.
1, 2, and 3. And one more.
Thank you, everybody.
Are you guys the original adjustment board?
And just at the podium.
We would just like to say thank you for the recognition of those who have dedicated their lives to help those in our community, because as caseworkers, we make a lot of sacrifices, especially after what we've just gone through. It is going to be our goal and our focus and mission to help those families navigate those tough things that they're going to go through, even while we're trying to navigate it in our own personal lives. So thank you for the recognition. Thank you for the support. And we look forward to continuing to serve in this county.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
job there, Commissioner Sandelli. Thank you. And next one is Commissioner Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I have the folks from Lee-Tran, Robert, Cody, bring your team forward. We want to do a special recognition for Lee-Tran this month. And y'all can just stand right by the podium and I'll read the resolution into the record. Just like all of our county employees, Lee-Tran's been working extra hard to help people get to and from the shelters and really all over. So, okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'll read the resolution into the record recognizing Mobility Week in Lee County. Whereas Mobility Week is a cooperative effort by the Florida Department of Transportation and its partner agencies to promote awareness of safe multimodal transportation choices by hosting an annual collection of outreach events. And whereas Mobility Week is an ideal time for counties, cities, and transportation agencies to highlight transportation achievements, benefits, and new initiatives. And whereas Mobility Week is an opportunity for individuals to explore the various transportation choices available to them and to think about how multimodal transportation reduces traffic congestion, benefits the environment, and improves community health. And whereas Mobility Week is consistent with Lee-Tran's key priority of providing safe and convenient transportation options to Lee County citizens. And whereas the Lee County Board of County Commissioners and the Lee County Transit support Mobility Week by participating in transportation awareness campaigns focused on transit safety and other transit benefits. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida hereby proclaim the week of October 21st through October 28th, 2022 as Mobility Week in Lee County, and it's executed this 18th day of October by our Chairman, Cecil Pendergrass. Congratulations, y'all, on Mobility Week. Robert, I'd like to present that to you. There you go, sir. Good. And Robert, would you like to say a few words?
Good morning, Chairman, Board, County Administration, County Attorney's Office. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for celebrating Mobility Week. If there was ever a time to celebrate public transportation, it would be in the wake of Hurricane Ian. And what we've been able to do, my team and I, primarily my team, and to focus on Lee-Tran and Lee County's residents to ensure the safe transportation of them throughout our county in various areas that we have never transported individuals in before. So public transportation is a key component, not just for every day, but in the wake of devastation and impacts to our community. So I would just like to tell everyone, Lee-Tran is always available to educate, to promote, and to bring people into our county and move them throughout our community. So we thank you all for participating, and we thank you all for celebrating Mobility Week and the wonderful transit workers that we have here today. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. Mr. Chairman. That'd be the last ceremonial this morning. I would like to recognize a couple people in the audience this morning. I think Matt Caldwell's here and Kevin Carnes is here this morning, and we also have Mark McQueen, the Panama City manager. Mark, if you could stand up and raise your hand. There he is. He's the Panama City manager. He's been here observing. They went through Hurricane Michael 4 years ago, I guess it was. So the whole area of Bay County, he's here. So thank you again for your community support, so knowing what we've gone through lately. Okay, we can move on to the recap. We have one item for corrections or revisions, item A4. Need a motion and a second for that. Additional information?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the revision and correction for item A4.
Motion. We have a second.
Second that.
Any public comment on the correction of A4? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Okay. At this time, items be pulled by discussion by the board for the consent item. Commissioner Greenwell, would you like to pull any items for the consent?
I'm sorry.
Any items be pulled for the consent?
No.
Commissioner Hammond.
I have none this morning.
Commissioner Sandelli. None. Commissioner Wing. Okay. At this time, we'll move balance. Motion for the balance.
I'll move approval of the balance of the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
We have a motion second. At this time, we'll take public comment on the consent items. We have one card for the consent. Marsha Ellis.
Good morning, honorable commissioners. This is the first meeting, of course, since the last meeting in which I spoke about my concerns regarding sewage infrastructure prior to Hurricane Ian, when we still were anticipating Hermine entering our community. Today, we have sewage throughout our community, as I'm sure that you're well aware of. And at this point, I call for a timely action, and in a matter of alerting the community and alerting the country to the extent of sewage and the public health risk to safety and to public health in this community at this time, as we're evaluating the impacts and the widespread nature of these sewage spills throughout our community, the disease like Vibrio that's being carried, and the fact that we have well-meaning people wanting to come into our community who maybe don't share that same local knowledge that we have and are falling victim to their best intentions. So I ask that there be a timely action to alert the public and the broader community, our national community, to the true hazard that the water poses to us at this time. Secondly of all, I wish I could say that timeliness was my only concern, but it's not. At this point, I have great concerns regarding some oversight. I know that, there are benefits to local rule, but there are also flaws to local rule. And sometimes we become too inward looking. And at this point, I feel like a forensic analysis of what's going on in terms of our response and our prior to the hurricane and currently going forward is necessary so that we don't make mistakes. So I just ask that communications acknowledge the severity of our water issues. And I also ask that we acknowledge what has happened and we bring in resources to protect the taxpayers' wallet and also to protect public health and safety as we move into our season, when we have many, many people who will be, as typical of snowbirds, entering back into our community. So I know that we have some valuable resources in the community, such as the water school, the Colusa Water Keepers. We have a robust natural resources department at the county, and I just ask that we acknowledge what's happened and we put out the appropriate warnings and we have some forensic oversight to protect our investment in this county, our federal investment in this county, and our water resources in order to prevent. I'm all about prevention, in order that we can prevent more fatalities from happening here in our community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the consent? Andrew, would you like to address the board?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name's Andrew. I'm the director of Lee County Legal Aid. This is Blair Domenico, our legal director. I just wanted to, I know you want to keep everything moving. I wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for your continued support of our agency. We were born in Lee County 55 years ago with a focus on children. It's a focus that we maintain today. I think one of the best innovations we've brought in the last 5 years has been our relationship with the clerk of the court, who we're working hand in glove with. But I wanted to let all of you know that should any constituents call you, contact you with legal concern, I would encourage each and every one of you to reach out to me directly. What you will find if that happens is that a team of knowledgeable lawyers will drop what they're doing and address your constituent concern immediately. So please feel free to do that at any time. Again, thank you for your continued support.
Great, thank you, Andrew. At the same time, any other public comment on the consent items? We'll close public comment, come back to the board. We have a motion, we have a second. Any objections to the consent items? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we will convene as a Port Commission for the Port Authority for item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you please, item number 1 is a request to approve a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the Southwest Florida Professional Firefighters and Paramedics, Local 1826. Commissioners, this item was negotiated by your staff with the union and their representatives, our employees. The employees and the union have ratified the agreement, and we respectfully request approval as well.
Great, thank you. I see some members from 1826. Anybody like to speak or anything before we? No? Good morning, Henry.
Good morning. I want to thank the board for their support through the contract negotiations, as well as the county manager's office and the Port Authority for a successful contract. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the board for a motion.
I'll move the item.
We have a motion.
I'll second it, Mr.
We
Chair.
have a second, and I'd like to say thank you, Henry, and you and all your colleagues for everything you've done in Lee County. You're still out there working with us now and working through the community, so thank you again for all your recovery efforts. We have a motion. We have a second. Any public comment on this item? Come back to the board for action. Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will now reconvene back as the Board of County Commissioners for item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number 2, asking you to authorize use of affordable housing trust funds for development of permanent supportive housing. Would ask Mr. Moore to make the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. This administrative item is presented by the Department of Community Development, and approval provides bridge funding in the amount of $595,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for a CDBG acquisition and rehabilitation project located at 461 Van Buren Street in Fort Myers. This project will provide permanent supported housing for persons with disabling conditions, specifically persons with severe and persistent mental illness. Community Assisted Supported Living, also known as CASTLE, will be the owner and program manager for the project. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund will be repaid using CDBG funds upon acquisition of the property. Jeannie Sutton is available if you have any additional questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? I'll come back to the public comment on this item. Any public comment on agenda item number 2? We'll come back to the board for a motion.
I'll gladly move the item.
I'll second it, Mr.
We
Chair.
have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 3 is a request for the board to ratify certain actions taken by your county manager pursuant to County Ordinance 87-01. Commissioners, these resolutions are in response to Hurricane Ian and the county's need for emergency response to that event. The resolutions are shown in your backup material and also on the board behind you. I can read them into the record if you would like. If not, we would respectfully request approval to ratify and confirm the actions taken by the county manager in response to Hurricane Ian.
Thank you, County Attorney. Any questions for staff at this time? No? Any public comment on item number 3? We'll come back to the board for an action.
Chairman, I have a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asking you to approve this morning reimbursement resolution for response, recovery, and mitigation costs for Hurricane Ian. I would ask Mr. Winton to make the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. This item is a request to take out lines of credit of up to $400 million for cash flow purposes to pay for Hurricane Irma damages and recovery. These lines of credit will be secured by a covenant to budget and non-ad valorem revenues, meaning revenues other than property tax revenues, notably reimbursements from state and federal agencies, FEMA being the biggest of those. We will take these loans out in tranches. So right now on the street, we have a line of credit, RFP, for $150 million. That we're going to get responses on and pick the best bank or entity that provides the best rates for those. The reason we're doing that and not taking up to $400 million all at once in a line of credit is because the amount that is just held in capacity that you haven't actually drawn down, there's an interest rate on that. It's not the same interest rate as what you've taken out, but it's a nominal interest rate. So we need to make sure that we manage when we pay invoices and when we're going to get reimbursement from FEMA. And we're doing this because we don't want to take our reserves down to a very low level.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Ryan.
Pete, I appreciate the explanation. We've all had the opportunity to meet with Bay County. They put together a rather comprehensive document, and they have about 185,000 people, and they borrowed $300 million. It's certainly my recommendation that while we have the capacity to certainly go to $500 million, given the scope given the size of this. They're also working with the legislators to try to have FEMA even pick up the interest. That isn't done yet, but if you go through their playbook, I think you'll find it to be a very good piece of information. I would rather be overly cautious. I'd rather be in a position where, what if the magnitude of this, I don't think we've gotten our arms around. They actually put together a task force with all the cities, had a chair from their Board of County Commissioners, chair of the task force, and kind of go through this. There's many aspects of it. I think the read is fascinating. Obviously, I did an overview of it, but in my opinion, I certainly would like us to challenge Pete and probably go to $500 million. That would be my recommendation. Pete, you have any problem with that?
No, Commissioners, at this point, this is a best estimate, but it's very rough. You know, the areas that we're looking at, the primary areas that we'll pay damages in are just general government, our facilities that were damaged, solid waste for debris removal, transportation facilities for roads and bridges and street lights, street signs, and also our utility system. So I do not have a problem with an additional $100 million on that.
I just think of the size. So 4 years ago is when Michael hit Bay County. And 4 years ago, it cost them a little over $320 million. Just looking at this with 850,000 people, while we have the ability and capacity, I'd rather be safe than sorry. There's an expense, and I don't want to diminish that, a different expense, because most times when you get to facilities this size, it's a much reduced amount, but you've actually set aside. I'd hate to be in the middle of this process and say we need X, Y, Z.
I have a question. Pete, going from 400 to 500, Commissioner Wayne just said there's a cost. Is there expense, but is there more that you'll be able to buy the rate down cheaper, the bond rating lower if you go for 500 million, or is it more expensive?
No, I just think it's general authorization for capacity, so we don't have to come back to the board. We will keep the board apprised of, how much we've spent and how much we've received in reimbursement throughout this entire process.
And what if the funds are not used? Then we return it? Is there a cost to return it early?
This is, so the 500 million, 400 or 500 million is just the authority to go up to that in lines of credit. Like I said, we plan to do it in tranches, so we're not paying interest on unused portions of any one line of credit.
I just do want to let my colleagues know, and I don't know if Pete's told you yet, but we already receiving money already. I think Saturday I signed the grant form by 8:35. That night we had confirmation we already got 12.5. So money is going to be coming in hopefully this year faster than we've seen with Irma and what happened with Bay County. So hopefully on the federal side we'll be receiving the money faster than the FEMA side. So, but I'm okay with it as long as no extra cost with it.
I just look at the document, I look at their experience, what they went through. If anything, it was, they were kind enough to come on down and explain it to us, but more importantly, put together their playbook. Looking at their playbook, it's pretty comprehensive in that way. I like the way they went about this. I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, in the financial world, it's something that I'm very comfortable with. It's just something that I think, given the size of us, I'd rather be, conservative and make sure we have the capacity. Lines of credit are ones you use, you draw. It's just that the magnitude of this, I'm just not certain how quickly things get processed. And again, as we're moving along, we're seeing the speed of building bridges in 4 days. We're seeing different things that are going on. So it's just my recommendation, but I'll.
It definitely gives us the capacity.
No, I would support the motion from Commissioner Ruane. May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? So just so that, again, everything's clear. So we are going to take it out, Pete, in tranches of 150 million. So you'll do 150 million, and then we would start paying the interest on that 150, and then we wouldn't pay any interest on anything above the 150, or do we have to pay interest on reserving the between 150 and 500?
No, we'll just take out tranches and pay interest on that.
Okay, so
and it won't always be 150. It could be 150, 50, 100.
Okay, that's
This is the authority with all those kind of tranches to go up to the 500 million.
So your starting tranche will be 150, but you're not sure what your second may not need another second 150. Maybe we'll get blessed and something will happen. And okay.
Yeah, that is an unknown. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I'm comfortable with the motion then. If that's the motion,
That is my motion.
I'll second it then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to increase to 500 million. Okay, this time public comment.
One other question, Pete, if you would, by all means. Pete, is it going to be one bank or is it going to be participating banks in the 500 million?
Commissioner, at this point, we're looking at one entity.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll get responses that people will team up, but.
Yeah, generally in the financial world, when you start to get into large capacity, it's not uncommon for one bank to underwrite it, but they might actually have one participate in a piece of it. That's another way to, obviously, them free up capacity as well. But they have to honor the terms and conditions. They're just no different than any one of us going into business and say, okay, I'll participate 25% in this business venture. I'll participate. Very commonly done in the banking world, especially at the dollar amounts we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Any public comment on this item?
Good morning, gentlemen. So one of the things that has really come out of Hurricane Ian has been a great deal of scrutiny on the part of national media and various media outlets regarding the response of our county to this unprecedented disaster, at least in modern history. And I'm speaking on this particular consent item in regard to the Crowder Gulf transportation and the CBS news piece out of Miami, which I'm sure you're all.
Marcia, if I could.
Yes.
Agenda item number 4 is for the administrative agreement for $400 million loan. It's not about that. That's on number 7. So
I saw that. So
just stick to this item.
we could. I just filled out my card inappropriately when I came in and asked to speak on all the agenda items. So if you're comfortable, for time purposes, if I speak after number 7, I'm comfortable with delaying what I say until then.
This is about 4.
Are you comfortable with me speaking after number 7, even though I filled out my card incorrectly when I came in?
I'm just telling you right now, you're using your 3 minutes to talk about the line of credit. So
Okay.
that's what the agenda item we're voting on right now.
Yes, so I was just concerned because it does mention the solid waste line of credit, so I would assume that line of credit would be paying the $40
Could be.
a
Go
load
ahead.
instead of the 5 cents a load as is currently contracted.
Go right ahead. It's not
Okay.
part of this item, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to just give what I think is meaningful comment as the items come up. So I was concerned in regard to the CBS piece because it stated that there's a current contract with Crowder Gulf for 5 cents per mile to transport the debris, which is enormous. I drove past it yesterday in Estero. It's enormous, out to DeSoto County or wherever we're going to contract with those landfills. And that today, in fact, it was going to be approved by the commissioners at some point along the way for that 5 cents per mile rate to increase to 40, which this is really shocking to me, to $40 a mile, costing taxpayers and being billed to the federal government for something in excess of $20 million. Again, I think if we have the benefit, we have some positives with federal involvement in our response, and we also have some obligations to the broader country to have some oversight and some forensic oversight to the spending of these funds. This particular contract does concern me greatly because we have a historic relationship, from what I understand, with moving our debris to these inland communities, which can further imperil our future as we are pushing further and further inland to accommodate our population. So I just ask that there be more oversight over these huge expenses and that we have some oversight regarding this particular Crowder Gulf contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item number 4? We'll come back to the board for action. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Any objections? No objection, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 5, asking you to authorize the renewing of the annual contracts for fiscal year 22-23 Partnering for Results funds. And ask Mr. Moore to make the presentation, please.
Good morning again, Commissioners. This administrative item is presented by the Human and Veteran Services Department, and it seeks approval of contracts with nonprofit agencies to address human service needs throughout Lee County. Partnering for Results program is also known as PFR. The total amount of all contracts recommended for funding in FY 22-23 will not exceed $5,586,442. Funds were allocated by the board during the 2023 budget process. This funding will support 52 human services programs at 40 nonprofit agencies. The program priorities include supportive living, out-of-school youth activities, and emergency assistance. The Partnering for Results agreements are based upon a reimbursement rate per unit of service delivered. Staff is available should you have any questions regarding this allocation.
Any questions for staff? Okay.
Mr. Chair, actually, may I ask one question? Just, and don't want to get too deep into it today, but one of the things I wanted to ask about, I noticed in the agenda item report, the summary, that we haven't done the competitive process for the Partnering for Results since fiscal year 1920. Could they just refresh my memory on what happened that year? Was it COVID related? Why we stopped doing that? And then do we have plans to revisit the selection process and the competitive process in the future as we go forward with this program?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. You are correct. We have frozen the amount allocated this year and the programs that we're supporting. It was determined that because of all of the aid that's flowing through CARES Act, ARPA, and now some relief we're getting because of the hurricane, it was best that we left these contracts intact with these partners. It is something that we certainly want to come back to the board and have a conversation in regards to.
Okay, so probably as we get into the next fiscal year and things calm down with the hurricane, we can look at that process again then?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to point out the board's commitment the last 5 years. Every year we've increased this. This, again, another 10% increase. So our community, we're recognizing the needs of our community. We're definitely addressing those. So thank you for all the staff working on that. So great job. Okay, any public comment on item number 5? We'll come back to the board for action.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Greenwell. Any other discussions? Any objections? No objection. Motion is carried. Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number 6, we're asking you to ratify a contract for Class 1 landfill Phase 3 construction. Ask Mr. Whitehead to make the presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead with Lee County Solid Waste. This approves construction for approximately $14.5 million for additional airspace at the landfill. This airspace is already permitted. It is not an expansion of the landfill, and it also coincides with all neighbor agreements that we have with landfill. This is part of our normal construction process for the landfill.
Great. Has nothing to do with the hurricane, correct?
No, sir.
Nothing to do with the hurricane?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Okay. Any public comment, item number 6? We'll come back to the board for an action.
Mr. Chairman, seeing that this was approved as part of our budget for our capital improvement program for the landfill and the solid waste department, I'll move approval as recommended.
I will second that.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Wayne. Any other discussion? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 7, Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 7, asking you to ratify approval of the contract for debris recovery services for Lee County. As you'll recall, during the storm, with the authority provided to the county manager under Florida Statute 252, and after declaration of state of local emergency, I did I did execute this contract, and so this is asking you to ratify that approval to take you, and I know there's been some conversation about this contract, whether it's in the media or local conversations about debris removal, and it doesn't matter what storm we're talking about, debris removal is always, always, always a hot button. It is never fast enough, and we all understand that. I can tell you that the debris removal in this case is going along at about 3 times faster than it did during our last hurricane, Irma. We're collecting over 70,000 cubic yards of debris per day, but the amount of debris is far greater than it was during the last hurricane, somewhere between 2 and 4 million cubic yards. But to help us better understand this agreement, I'm going to ask Mr. Salyer and Mr. Whitehead to help us with this explanation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Commissioners, Doug Whitehead will walk through the contract in some detail in a moment, but so as not to bury the lead here, we want to spend a minute continuing on the theme that the county manager just enunciated. And if we could go to the next slide, please. There you will see this is our current collection efforts versus the same time period after Hurricane Irma. So, you can see that the collection is at least 3 times and quite frankly, probably 5 times as fast as what we were doing at that time. We've ramped up much quicker, and that is, of course, a tribute to both Crowder Gulf and Thompson, our debris management contractors. But it also is important to note that this is a tribute to staff as well. They had to prepare all of the pre-approved debris management sites, and that really is the key to this operation. The quicker that those trucks can unload and get back and pick up more debris, the faster that turnaround time, the more we're going to pick up, and that really has put us in a good place.
Glenn?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, how many sites we have? We have 9 now up?
So we have 9 that are for vegetative and C&D, and then we have 2 that are for sand. What's unique about this storm, Commissioner Pendergrass, is we also have thousands and thousands of cubic yards of sand to pick up that we can screen and re-nourish our beaches with.
And those sites are only used for our contractors under our current contract, correct? So like the municipalities, the cities, because I think a lot of the calls we're getting, I know I've got some calls from Cape Coral, and I've got some calls from the city of Fort Myers residents. All that, the cities have their own disposal contracts, so it's separate and they're not using our sites, correct?
Yes, sir, you are.
And that's the problem. I think some people see sites like in Estero or somewhere in the cities, and they think it's a county process, but they're still, it's under this municipality. So just make sure I'm saying that publicly so people understand where they live, and these sites are being used for the unincorporated areas.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That is correct. And I think if we go to the next slide, we can talk about that just a little bit more.
And that's some of the complaints that come from the city residents, but you see the rate of our collections faster than it was 5 years ago.
Right. No, understood. Point well taken. And so we are off to this really fast start, but I think the good news is, and if we go to the next slide, the county manager talked about the difference in storms, the difference in debris volumes. We're estimating perhaps twice as much debris in this storm as versus Irma, but at our current rate of collection, we will pick up twice as much debris in half the amount of time as we did in Hurricane Irma. That collection rate of 70,000 cubic yards a day is at least a third more than our very best collection did during Hurricane Irma. So that is off to a good start. And to your point, all of the cities have their own contracts, their own debris management sites. And I think with that, I would like to turn it over to Doug Whitehead to just continue.
Yes, Commissioner Ray has a question.
So I appreciate, Glenn, what you just said. So what would you attribute the reason that we're picking up twice as fast?
A few reasons, Commissioner. One is just the responsiveness of our debris vendors, their ability to attract assets quickly to the area. You'll remember in Irma, there was a hurricane in Texas that had taken some of those assets to other places, so that is a big help. The absence of a lot of downed power lines throughout unincorporated Lee County helps. That way the equipment can access these areas to pick up the debris. But third, and I can't emphasize enough, is the fact that we do have 36 pre-approved debris management sites throughout the county. Now, not all of those will be usable in any given storm, but because we have so many and staff has taken so long prepping those, we can find enough to use that are high and dry and accessible to really get this moving fastly, and that's the big reason.
So then, in summary, more assets, better conditions, obviously.
Yes, sir.
As a result of that, and better planning.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I do want to add, myself and Commissioner Ham were here during Irma, and one of the challenges we had then, I know staff remembers this, was I think 3 or 4 of our sites for vegetation was flooded because we had the storm the week before the hurricane. So we couldn't even get trucks or use those sites, so it was delayed by weeks because of that. So this time staff was prepared. They had multiple sites, and then they were able to get the assets here. And so it's this preparation, planning, and getting there. And if you remember, Commissioner Hammond, we had the we thought we're doing something good. We had some good friends, the community people, the MH Horticulture. That's how it all started. They came in and lobbied, wanted to take debris in their yards because other yards were there, and we know the results of that after 5 years, multiple fires and lawsuits. So I think we all learned from that lesson. But things like that happened 5 years ago. There's a lot of things that happened we weren't planning on, like losing sites before the storm. Any other questions? If not, Doug?
Just a comment. With this number of sites obviously gives us options, which gives availability, but also I assume the managing of those sites gives us the ability to get to those sites quickly and expeditiously. I think that's an important part of why we're seeing the results that we're having. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Doug?
Good morning, gentlemen. First of all, to carry on to that, I'd like to thank Amanda Condamina and Paul Flores who are here today. They're the people who did the hard work in putting together the debris management sites, so really appreciate all the work they did for years after Irma. So, gentlemen, there's been a lot of conversations and controversy about the new contract with Crowder Gulf. The slide before you, while detailed, essentially shows that the old contract, which was signed in February 2017, when you inflate it for the over 21% of inflation, which is part of the contract, would actually be more expensive, including the transportation piece, than the new contract, which was signed on October 2nd. I think that's important to do. There's been a lot of information in the press. I would like to say we're not going to Okeechobee. We're not going to Osceola. We're not going to Heart of Florida, which is in Sumter County. We're not going to those places. We are using one landfill in Charlotte County, which is about 3 miles north of our county line. And even with that assumption in there, the present contract, which was signed on October 2nd, for a typical load of 100 cubic yards of material is about 10%, 11.68% cheaper for that typical load. And it is a typical load. The other thing I'd like to point out is that it is our choice to use that landfill or to use our own landfill, which is much further away than that landfill to the sites. The landfill along 41, which we're using for a portion of the material, it's just more efficient. It helps us get more material out of our community into a proper disposal location. So I'm sure there's many questions, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Doug, so help me out with that line that says cost per mile for alternate disposal sites outside of Lee County. So you're showing $5 in the 2017 contract. Is that $5 what the 5 cents would have been inflated to?
Sir, it's 5 cents. It was 5 cents per cubic yard of material in the 2017 contract. That means it was for a full truck, it was $5, and inflated it's to $6.09, which is still a lot more, and we need to look at that. But you can see that still the article is correct in that going out of county for a long distance is very, very expensive. For this short distance of 3.2 miles, that line item is a lot more expensive, but still the net works for us.
Well, why does this matrix that you're showing us here on the screen say it's 0 for the contractual 2022?
Sir, if you look.
Yeah, I mean, item 4 here says $40.
Yes, sir, it is $40.
Yeah.
And that $40 is reflected in the $110,000 to the far right.
Okay.
Versus the $16,767.
So is that a typo that it says 0 though?
Yes, sir, it is.
It is a typo that says 0. Okay, so it should be 40. Okay, so you're showing, all right, so now if I can read the 2 far right columns, you're saying the 16,000, so I'm looking at the 4th line down, $16,767.94 is the estimated cost that it would have been under the old contract, and the $110,000 is the estimated cost that it'll be under the contract that we would ratify today.
Yes, sir, for that single line item, yes.
Okay, so the article does mention the DeSoto County landfill. Do you have plans to use that landfill?
Sir, not at this time. It depends upon if, as we continue to grow the amount we're picking up off the street, do we need it? But we would have to really speak to our vendor about the cost involved. We can go to the SLD landfill on Highway 41, we can go to our own landfill at this time for final disposal, and multiple vegetation sites around the county.
Mm-hmm. So help me understand, this line item on the cost for alternate disposal sites was just one of many considerations in the entire contract as a whole. Help me understand why ratifying this contract is in the best interest of Lee County then when you take it as a whole.
Sir, I think it, again, like I said, under most typical work, it provides us savings compared to the old contract, which was inflated, like I said, over 21% over the life of the contract. So this is cost less for us. It helps us provide continuity throughout a response to disaster. But the cost is the major consideration, despite that line item, which again, going to any landfill is our choice, and we can provide you information on the choices we make and what we're doing and why.
And just so that, again, I make sure that I'm reading it correctly, are you saying on the column that says RFP evaluation amounts of 2752, is that we're estimating that we'll do 2,752 miles for alternate disposal sites?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How does that jive with what you estimate we're really going to have to do if we haul to the Charlotte County? I mean, it's 3 miles away, so, and that's 3 miles one way that we're paying for?
We pay 1 mile, one way, 3.2 miles, only one way.
So have you worked up any kind of estimate on how many miles we might actually use?
Sir, right now is that we're using Charlotte County. This assumes that everything is going to that landfill. Our percentage is far lower. I can get you that information after the meeting.
Okay.
I have a question. So Doug, the $40 originally that was in their contract, was not just for travel, that was also included what? Wasn't it for site locations too, and site prep?
No, sir. It's only for out-of-county final.
Out of county, just for transportation, nothing to do with sites or anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. And so all the other companies, this was all done before the storm. So there was a procurement process. Can you talk to us a little bit, give us that? How? And the companies that applied, they submitted their bids then, and now the storm's hit, so now they want to come back and rebid now or something? But can you walk through that process for us? Because I think this is all we all know where it's coming from. So obviously, when you have a news story come from Miami and you look at the background and thank God I have still some contacts in Dade County and Broward County over this weekend, so I found out a little bit more what's going on over there. But tell us about the procurement process and what happened to those companies where they were a year ago, 6 months ago, when this was up for them and they didn't want to do business with us then.
Yes, sir. I mean, even 2 years out from the end of the contract, we start looking at our experience with Irma and the RFP. We developed the RFP. The RFP was working with our procurement department, was put, as the phrase goes, on the street, and we received, I think, approximately 9 respondents. After a meeting on the record, looking at price of which is only one component, of course, reliability and their operational plans are others, and their financial capability to deploy is a big condition, is that we narrowed it down to 4 proposers. We had each of those 4 proposers do a presentation and answer questions, and then a committee with a representative from the procurement department managing it voted on the contract. And on the number 1 proposer, and we did select the number 2 proposer if necessary.
The one company, the author or the creator of the story from Miami was Ashbrook. Where were they at in that process?
They were ranked 4th, sir.
They were ranked 4th.
Yes, sir.
Now, were they also approved vendor off the state piggyback from Fort Lauderdale contract, or was that not valid any longer?
Sir, I can't speak to that. I have heard that was rejected by our consultants, whether we could use that contract, but I'm not an expert on that, sir.
Glenn, can you respond to that? So were they approved vendor at the time? Were they approved vendor, or were they not approved vendor by the state, recognized by the state?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, which vendor?
The Ashbrook company that was started this whole dialogue, were they approved vendor at the time from the state or not?
I do not know the answer to that. We'd have to find out.
Roger?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
We know something.
Commissioners, the contract that was being proposed by Ashbrook was to piggyback on the Fort Lauderdale contract. That contract did expire in, I think, 2021. It had 2 one-year renewals available. What we don't know is whether or not either of those 2 renewals was executed. After legal analysis by the state, the Fort Lauderdale contract was found to be inconsistent with federal procurement guidelines. So we would not have been able to use it under any circumstance.
So to protect our taxpayers, to make sure we get FEMA reimbursement, we had to use a vendor that was legally sufficient within the legal guidelines for FEMA requirements, correct?
Yes, sir, correct. To receive 100% reimbursement by FEMA, which we have available to us for the first 60 days following the storm, would not be a guarantee if we had used the Ashbrook contract.
Okay, great. Just one quick question, Doug, I'm sorry. Richard, based on what your office reviewed of the current contract before us, is it legal and sufficient and it's gone through the legal requirement related to procurement and competitive bid?
Mr. Chairman, board members, without getting into the detail that's presented on the board, and I'll leave that to administration, certainly within your purview. And without waiving any arguments we would have under the applicable procurement statutes, to the extent they are even applicable, I just want to point out to the board that this contract was signed by your county manager on October 2nd of this year, and it was signed pursuant to authority granted to him by Chapter 252 Florida statutes, Lee County Ordinance 87-01, Executive Order 22-218, Lee County Resolution 22-09-31, Lee County Resolution 22-10-02, Lee County Resolution 22-10-06, and Lee County Resolution 22-10-07. Commissioners, in a nutshell, those documents that I've just referenced provide for emergency responses to emergency circumstances. That's what was done in this case, and the action that you're being asked to take today is to ratify action that was previously taken by your county manager pursuant to lawful authority in agreement with our office, and this item is similar to administrative item number 3 that you've previously approved. So our opinion is this contract lawfully exists. We're merely seeking your ratification of your county manager's actions.
Great, thank you. Doug, continue. Did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
Comments, sir.
Kevin?
Follow up, Richard, and I appreciate your thorough explanation. So is there anything that is not consistent with what we would have done in any other emergency with this contract?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's normal protocol we're following, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Sandelli?
I want to focus on one word that you brought up, and that was continuity. I think to date, the current provider is, I think everybody's pretty pleased with the amount of stuff we moved and what we have to do. And part of that for me is continuity. I've been in business for some years. Once a service provider gets into a bifurcated situation with another service provider, regardless of what the business is, that's a challenge. And it breaks that chain of continuity, and it makes it more difficult. And we are bumping up against some very important timelines. And I think if it's working, I'd be that reticent to step away from that. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, sir.
Doug, did you have more presentation to go over?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions at the time?
So just a thought, I mean, it's just something we're here, and obviously we're going through this process, and we want to be transparent to the taxpayer. We want to do everything we possibly can to go through this. I think part of the problem is you have a narrative out there, you have our story, and I want to continue to make sure the public understands our story. So perhaps in the spirit of that, we've done workshops in other areas, and I know we ratified this, but a workshop in a desire to continue the education process, what we've done, how we've done it, in a way where we could bifurcate this from our regular meeting and just continue to be transparent to the taxpayers. What I'd like to certainly propose to this group. I just think that's important to continue to talk about this because there's fact and there's fiction, and I want to continue to make sure people understand the fact as best we can. Fundamentally, that's what I'd like to do.
Definitely, we can give the staff direction and do that in the future, have a workshop. It'd be great. Like you said, it's perception. If you just look at the story that was, I don't think I read the whole story of it, you see who's sharing the story, where it's coming from. It's obviously one-sided. So most people I haven't seen is this group of people that are sharing it. It's just unfortunate that they're sharing it. But, Jimmy Patonis, our CFO from Florida, last week, and the governor did a presentation, a press conference down at the Lakes Library with resources, and something that Jimmy Patonis pointed out to the group there on the news, on the press conference, and he said to me personally, he says, we're warning all our residents in Lee County, we're warning all the senior citizens, be aware of fraud, scam. If somebody shows up, so they're from the government, they're going to clean your yard up for free, and then they want to be charged. We're having that happen throughout the county. We're having people show up people's yards. Just had this last week in Briarcliff. People showed up in the yard and said, I'm here from Lee County to clean your debris up. The guy starts working, and he said he wants $11,000 for it. The guy noticed he has a Broward County Beach parking sticker in his back window, so it kind of alerted him. So the neighbor went next door, got the other neighbors. They all armed themselves and chased the guy out of the neighborhood. The point is, though, he told me, Jimmy Patonis said, you're going to have people come up in wheelbarrows, pickup trucks, tractors, and suit and tie, come in with lobbyists and attorneys. They're going to try to persuade you guys from this. And he said, just focus on making sure you protect the taxpayers and focus on the FEMA requirements and let the contracts go through the process. So he's just, fair warning, it could be somebody in a trailer park getting ripped off. It could be, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars here, and I think that's what the tension is, people obviously. But I do want to point out, I do want to ask Roger or Doug, so I've been telling people that approach us, they can, if they want to go contract, subcontract or Crowd or Golf under our contract, they can. If they have a truck and they want to go do work with them, they can go to work with them, correct?
Yes, sir.
So what's the process for somebody who wants to have, they have a business, they want to do contract work with Crowd or Golf under this contract?
Sir, we're referring people to their subcontractor sign-up page on the Crowder Gulf website, and we do respond to them with an email and a phone call if necessary.
But I think we all want more, the better. You know, the faster we get this debris picked up, is I think we want that. We saw that in Irma, and we just want to make sure we do it right and it's legal. And the process, we dealt with this, Commissioner Hammond, remember 5 years ago, and it was, we were looking at 6 months to 8 months at the time clearing the roads, and we couldn't handle that. So you guys stepped up and did a little bit better, but this is even better though, to clean up.
But, I mean, I think what we do and what I'm trying to drive at is A, let's be fully educational to the community. B, let's be fully transparent. And C, if there are any other challenges that are presented to us, we as a working group can certainly address those collectively, just dealing with this particular item. I mean, understand exactly the way the process goes through. I understand this is what we're doing, but we're going to continue to try to educate the community, be transparent to the community. And any challenges that come up, we as a group have had the ability, and I find workshops to be very, very productive and very informative.
I do want to say one thing. Thank you for staff. If people are not aware, on our website, you can go to our website and go to leagueup.com, and there's an interactive map. You can actually go on there to see where your neighborhood is at as far as pickup. There's 3 passes and where they're at. So it's a great resource for us as commissioners to pass on to our residents. They've been very helpful getting, but again, some of the questions we're getting from Cape Coral and different cities is they're within the cities. But like you said, Commissioner Wayne, transparency, but everything's in front of everybody, so we just have to make sure we get the word out to people. So that's maybe when Roger's staff can put that message out and go through, we have to give it a little media push. We have to use all our resources, because they're using their social media from the East Coast to do it. It's coming through the social media network for the DNC here and stuff, because of the whole DeSantis thing. But it is what it is. We have to deal with it for another 3 weeks. But we can get through this and get the debris picked up. But Commissioner Sandelli?
Well, I would just, sorry. I agree with Commissioner Wayne. I think we're all learning every day, and that's what makes us better. And we're learning on the fast track. So I think the ability to get together in a workshop for ourselves and for the community, I think would be very beneficial. So thank you.
I had a few more questions, Mr. Chairman, if I may. In regards to the letter we received from the attorney representing DRC and the additional scope that was added for the private property and the waterways, do you have a comment on that letter, Mr. County Attorney, and the issues that were raised there?
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer the substantive response to county administrative staff, but I would point out, again, as an overview, consistent with my previous comments, the citation statute contained within both that writing and the writing we received last night, approximately 10 minutes to 10 p.m., cite 2 statutes that are not relevant in the instant situation because we acted pursuant to emergency powers under Florida Statute 252 and not the procurement statute, which is referenced as 287. So neither of the letters caused me any legal concerns.
Okay. That's great. And then I guess the only question I think still just begs to be asked is what would happen? What is the alternative? What if the board voted today not to ratify this? What would happen? What would be the consequence?
With due respect to the board, your action today is largely ministerial in nature. It's a position of our office that your county manager had the authority to execute the contract on October 2nd, and therefore, in our opinion, a valid contract exists between Lee County and the contract vendor. So if you declined to ratify that action, would in all likelihood have no legal significance. It would just raise practical questions that we would then have to deal with. But again, our recommendation without hesitation is that the county manager's actions be ratified.
Thanks. And then real quickly, just a final question for Doug. I had a chance to do the math real quick. It looks like the proposed 2,752 units under the RFP evaluation amounts, that would give us 860 trips at 3.2 miles a trip. Do you think we're going to haul more than 860 trips out of the county to that Charlotte County landfill?
I think, because this is an example, I think we will, and there will be money associated with, but again, we carefully decide where we go based upon efficiency, and I think The other priorities, which include making sure that we don't jam up material in county because we have to travel too far. So that's a decision we make, and we can brief you as often as you wish, sir.
The article, you know, he uses a hypothetical of 10,000 trips. Is 10,000 trips, that hypothetical, realistic? Is that probable?
That's 1 million cubic yards, so it's possible. Yes, sir. It's 1 million cubic yards. 10,000 times 100 is 1 million cubic yards, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Roger?
Mr. Chair? I've never counted how many storms I've worked over time, but just about every storm that's made landfall in Florida in the last 30 years or so, I've helped work. Every time disaster politics takes over at some point, because there is so much money to be made by some of these companies. It's millions of dollars that the federal government allocates and spends to help communities recover, not just ours, but it happens all over the state of Florida, happens all over the country, whether it's wildfires or floods or hurricanes. We received this letter that Commissioner Hamm just referenced from some attorneys yesterday out of Miami, and they say things like, it appears that the contract with Colorado Gulf contains additional services such as specific line item for waterway debris removal for water-based operations, which has the possibility. So it's of, you know, causing us to spend more money. So this letter is intended to muddy the waters. They represent someone who was not successful in the competitive process for this contract. And so they point out simply, in the end, one piece of the contract, and that is cleaning up of the waterways. Well, the state of Florida has already said they're going to be cleaning the waterways of all the derelict vessels. That's not going to be a local issue. There will be other debris that needs to be cleaned up in the waterways, but compared to the vessel cleanup, it pales in comparison. So I guess just a caution for all of us. We are happy to do a workshop, be completely 100% transparent about everything that has transpired, every decision that's been made. But everybody just needs to know that this is going to continue until this disaster is passed. The acute nature of this disaster is past. We are now about the business of cleanup and recovery. And the number of dollars involved is so great that we're going to see more of this. There will be people attempting to muddy the waters for months to come. We will, if you have questions, please just ask. We will be 100% transparent with every decision that's made.
Thank you.
And I guess I go back to, and I appreciate all your comments, Roger, and Richard, first and foremost, I think it's important that you clarify exactly the actions that we've taken in the past. Moreover, I believe that, we want to educate the public. We want to be as transparent as we can, and we want to be able to come up with whatever challenges there might be, and as a group, I have the utmost confidence as a group, whatever challenges are thrown before us, we'll be able to deal with. We'll be able to pivot, we'll be able to deal with whatever situation there is. Instead of just doing something in a 30-minute brief part of our agenda today, I just want to make sure we continue to do this, because again, I want to be educational, I want to be transparent, and I know we all do. So I just think let's put it forward, meet the challenge. If there's something we learn as we're going along, I think we have the opportunity to pivot and do exactly. Let's remember, it's a Cat 5 storm of unproportional winds with the storm surge that it was. And I guarantee you there's going to be things. The good news is that, honestly, when you review the Bay County document, there's a lot of things that you can learn from this and build upon. And they were nice enough to come down here. And that's my whole reason. I have nothing that I don't believe we can overcome and or be transparent about. That was the reason for it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for staff before we go to public comment? Roger, do you have anything else?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doug. We have public comment cards. The first one is Bart Smith from Key West. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Bart Smith on behalf of Ashbridge. And I have a letter that I'd like to place in the record and then also provide some presentation. So first, to address the piggyback contract, that contract did not have anything to do with Lee County. That was Fort Myers Beach and was nothing involving Lee County. As to Lee County, what we're bringing forth is something that we've had coming from Key West with Hurricane Irma, which is addressing these services that are outside the scope of your upland contract. And of course, decisions are always made after storms. These are emergencies, but you have to understand that hindsight is 20/20. And FEMA, when they do all of these reimbursements years later and review it and audit it and then tell you have to give the money back, it is important to understand that they have ramifications, especially when you're borrowing the money. The fact is that you had an RFP. That RFP was for land-based services. It was put out on July 1st. Responses were due August 9th. Ashbridge was the 4th place on the land-based. What was signed as part of this emergency contract not only had those services, but it also had services for private property cleanup as well as water-based services. Those services are materially different than the land-based services that are on behalf of Lee County and the Lee County right-of-ways and Lee County-owned property. These are for private property. These are for the waterways. These contracts, yes, a lot of it is done by the state, but there are certain parts that will be done individually by the county, reimbursed by the state. This happened in Monroe County after Irma, where there were several state contracts. Those contracts were let as separate RFPs, which then ensured that they would be reimbursed. Now, on the converse, when a rush was made just to sign and add on other material things that were not related to the land-based services, those services sometimes are not reimbursed. The prime example I can give was a $7 million shelter that the county requested immediately after the storm, believing everyone would not have a shelter, that was added into the contract. Ashbridge did it as a pass-through, didn't even provide a markup on it. Ultimately, when FEMA received that bill for that shelter, they denied it. And now the county's having to appeal it. So what you have is you have a contract that has your land-based services. I'm not going to that. You have the opportunity and the time to go out and go to RFP for the private property and for these water-based. These contracts are not mutually exclusive. You can go out for RFP for private property. No one's going to be doing private property work for a month. You're going to be starting with all your right-of-ways, all the cleanup that will go there. Secondly, as to the waterways, that always happens later. There's going to be a tremendous amount of work to be done, not only by the state, but by Lee County. We request that those items, and to be prudent, are sent out for us separate RFPs to get the bid.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker will be Daniel Zambera from Miami. I couldn't read your writing. Did I say it right? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
Should have been a doctor with that bad handwriting, I guess. Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Honorable County Commissioners. My name is Danielle Sanabria. I'm a procurement lawyer with LSN Law PA, and our offices are located at 3800 Northeast 1st Avenue in Miami, Florida, 33137. I represent DRC Emergency Services, one of the leading disaster management companies in the United States, and I'm here this morning to speak in opposition to Administrative Agenda Item 7 to ratify the approval of a contract for debris recovery services for Lee County to Crowder Gulf Joint Venture. Yesterday, my office submitted a letter detailing our position on this matter, which boils down to the fact that if this item is approved, it would authorize an anti-competitive contract to the recommended vendor in violation of Florida procurement law and potentially risk FEMA reimbursement. By way of background, back in July, Lee County issued the subject RFP for land-based disaster recovery services. The RFP was specifically limited to land-based operations for removal or remediation of debris for roads, streets, and right-of-way. This was what was specified in the RFP. This is what the county invited proposers to respond to. This is what proposer submissions were evaluated on, and this is what the resulting contract should be limited to. However, the contract before you today requesting approval is not limited to land-based operations, and instead includes various additional services for waterway debris removal for water-based operations, which, in light of Hurricane Ian, is an enormous additional contract scope worth hundreds of millions of dollars. that was never contemplated in the advertised RFP and is being improperly and uncompetitively awarded as part of this RFP process. I want to take the time to recognize that Hurricane Ian made landfall in Lee County on September 28th and was a horrific and catastrophic event for the community. Lee County is justified in wanting certain wanting certain prepositioned contracts to assist in recovery efforts for these exact types of disasters. And especially in emergency scenarios, it is reasonable and within industry norm that some additional line items and scope changes can be added to a contract. However, the additional scope or services must be tethered to the scope of work as advertised in the RFP and cannot be so substantial as to render the contract non-competitive and materially different from the solicitation terms. Moreover, the RFP contemplates FEMA reimbursement, which is jeopardized when contracts are not awarded via full and open competition. Even in public emergency scenarios under Chapter 255, Florida statutes will still require the federal award include as much competition as is practicable. And Florida Administrative Code requires agencies to attempt to obtain competitive pricing from at least 2 vendors. We do not challenge that Crowder Gulf, as the first-ranked proposer, has the right to do all of the land-based operations to the RFP. And I'm happy to see that in your presentation that the work is moving along quickly, and Crowder Gulf is a good vendor. However, we respectfully urge you to reject the inclusion of the uncompetitive and unlawful inclusion of the contract additional services, and either put out an emergency procurement for the water-based specific scope, or utilize a state term contract that already competitively established qualifications and pricing. Commissioner, you asked about consequences. You potentially risk reimbursement. The administrative code is going to ask you, did you reach out to at least 2 vendors? We know that for this type of waterway debris cleanup.
3 months been up, though.
Okay. We have time. We have time to do this competitively and transparently. I'm available should you have questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Did we have any other comment? Marcia, you mentioned earlier you wanted to speak on 7. Your card was for 4. Did you want to speak again? Yes, I did. Okay. This is for the agenda items ratifying the agreement that was already signed by the county manager. That's what that subject is.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm really well pleased that October 2nd, it looks like the county manager took some decisive action in terms of procuring these debris removal services. That, however, is in contrast to the evacuation orders and the level of preparation that should have gone into preparing for this storm, including that disastrous likelihood of the immense storm surge that has devastated this community and resulted in the loss of life. Let me also say that we cannot really fully equate. We're correlating 2 things that aren't related, because the damage from Hurricane Irma was very different. We had wind damage from Irma, we had storm surge damage from Ian, and that creates a much different type of debris.
Marcia, direct the board, and it's about the ratifying the contract.
Okay, so what where I'm going at with this is that a timely response to disaster occurs before the disaster happens. And I am very shocked that we didn't have provisions for this type of scenario ahead of time. And from my understanding, the scenarios that we did have to prepare our community were not implemented, and that protocol was not followed. Coming from a point of prevention as an educator, and this was my area of study. I worked in earth and space science to prepare the middle school students for emergency situations like hurricane preparedness, and for some of the challenges that we face specifically as a community here in Lee County for storm preparedness and climate change and human impact going forward in the future. I am shocked that we did not have these provisions in our preparedness plan, and I really am questioning the will of our city government, our county government, and our elected officials to adhere to those science-informed policies that include evaluating the types of debris that are created and having a plan that doesn't affect our ability to provide for ourselves in a broader regional sense, including the debris disposal in landfills ahead of time. The preparation should be happening beforehand. We cannot continue to be responding to emergency decisions in the moment, because that's when we make mistakes. And I believe that this is a contract that should be reevaluated so that we don't run into a problem down the road and then we have problems being reimbursed for this huge outlay of funds. I will also say I understand there are a lot of cars that are in our coastal waterways and that we probably don't don't even fully understand, separate from the vessels, the boating vessels, how many are out there, and that this has come to the attention of the local environmental community and professionals in the area. So I think that this is a very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Any other public comment on this item, item number 7? Okay, we'll come back to the board. And Commissioner Wayne, thank you for bringing up the workshop. So this is more reason why we need to inform the public of how the county prepares for storms year-round. And I think that provisions were placed back in February and March. We took and the declaration was signed before the hurricane. But this is a good opportunity for us to inform people what the county has done. Roger and staff has done for the years preparing for the storm, and those sites were in place for years ahead of time. So perfect example of having a workshop. We can put that out there. It's just trying to get that information to the public so that things were taken.
What I'd certainly, even before you take this action, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to certainly make a motion that we have a workshop planned with staff to not only identify the education component, the transparent component, and any challenges that staff may bring to our attention, obviously, that we be able to address. So I think we can cover all those. That'd be my motion.
I'll second that.
Second. Any public comment on the workshop? And do we need, Richard, do we need an actual vote on that, or just consensus? Okay. Any objections to that? Okay. Okay, and so we have the contract before item 7. We need an action on that, please.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just real briefly, just hopefully to put the period on this discussion. Real briefly, just reading from the Governor's Declaration, subparagraph C, in accordance with Section 252.38, paren 3, Florida statutes, each political subdivision within the state of Florida may waive the procedures and formalities otherwise required of a political subdivision by law pertaining to performance of public work and taking whatever prudent action is necessary to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the community, following local procurement and contracting policies. Number 3, entering into contracts. Number 4, incurring obligations, and then on to other items. Likewise, within your declaration of state of local emergency, there is the following language: be it further resolved that the Board of County Commissioners hereby exercises its authority and waives the procedures and formalities required by law of a political subdivision as authorized under Section 252.38 Florida statutes. That ratifies and confirms my earlier comments that notwithstanding any reliance on Chapter 287 and any rights that we have to pursue thereunder, this contract was pursuant to Chapter 252 and the statutes and the administrative codes that I have just referenced. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Good, thank you. Roger, I do want to say real quick, something that is coming up down by the beach area and the other parts of the county, the vessels in water, and we have some in mangroves, so I know it'll be different as recovery, but that's being covered by the state and the Coast Guard, is what was told at the EOC and by the governor's staff. That's being covered by the Coast Guard and FWC, correct? Vessels under submerged or in the water, abandoned derelict vessels?
Yeah, Commissioner, there's a vessel task force that convenes in Tallahassee that includes the State Department of Emergency Management, FEMA, Coast Guard, and a couple other of the agencies, and they are working through the final details of how to, to pick up all the vessels and automobiles that are in the bay.
And I remember talking to staff and Kevin Guthrie about that. I think some places where you actually have vessels inland, so it's not considered water, so that's going to be a challenge to get those out of the mangroves and the farmlands that got washed inland. So,
yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Come back to the board for action for item 7.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion. I'll second. Any other discussion? Any objection?
Well, I was going to say under discussion, just one last question under discussion then. For our county attorney, so since you say we have the valid contract, which would then include the additional scope on the waterways and private property, could we still do an emergency RFP for that service, or have we already contracted for that service now? Is that your opinion?
Mr. Chairman?
Richard?
Commissioners, you've already contracted for that service. If we're directed to do so, we would have to open up discussions with your vendor, but we are currently under contract for those services, and there is no legal requirement to pursue that remedy.
All I'm going to vote against the motion, Mr. Chairman. I don't feel comfortable with the way it's gone down, but understand the will of the board.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Any objections?
I object.
I do too.
We have 2 objections. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Move on to the walk-on carry-on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The walk-on we're asking you to approve a resolution authorizing an emergency agreement with FDOT for transit shuttle service. We ask Mr. Cody to make the presentation.
Good morning, Board. Robert Cody, Lee Tran. This is to approve the resolution authorizing the emergency agreement with FDOT for transit shuttle service. This is for Sanibel Island. This is a collaborative effort between Lee County Administrative Team, FDOT, and the City of Sanibel. What we're looking to do is shuttle resources to Sanibel Island, resources being people that are going to help clean up that island. And this will decongest the roadways, particularly the bridge. This is congestion mitigation at its best, where we can utilize our services in efforts to transport workers to the island and back.
Is it for Captiva too, or just?
Yes.
Okay. Sanibel and Captiva.
I'm sorry, when I'm referring to the island as a whole, but Sanibel being one of the catalysts, being that their city manager, Dana Souza, has been really active in engaging in these conversations with the Florida Department of Transportation, as well as our county administration.
Great.
But it's for the island as a whole.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other discussions?
Gladly move the item.
Second?
Motion second. Any public comment on this item? Come back to the board. We have a motion second. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner items. Commissioner Wayne, do you have anything?
I don't have any commission items, no, sir.
Commissioner Sandelli, you're good. Commissioner Hammond.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I had asked for a commissioner item on the debris hauling. I think we talked that completely to death. But I did want to say one more thing on I liked the matrix that you guys put together for us that showed the 2017 contract versus the 2022 contract. That was extremely helpful for the conversation. I'd like to know, and maybe our county attorney could help me out with how to phrase this in the form of a motion, but I would like for that to be a requirement from now on when we review these contracts to vote on them, to have a matrix that compares the old or existing contract to the new proposed contract inserted into the agenda item summary report. And so would we need to amend an ordinance to require that or an administrative code to require that? But I just would love to be able to see that side-by-side comparison from now on so that you could easily call out line items that are different and increased and be able to question that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, go ahead.
If it's the will of the board, I think just it's sufficient to provide direction to your county manager that that should be included as information as appropriate on contracts going forward. I don't believe a motion's necessary. I believe he'll be responsive.
Well, but you know, we could make it part of, I know he will. I have no question about that. He does a good job. I mean, I don't have any question about that. I'm just thinking for longevity's sake, so that it's codified, where would you codify that at? An administrative code or?
If any place within the administrative code, yes, sir.
Okay, so, you know, that would be, yeah, that would be my request, that you bring that back for a future meeting for us to vote on, inserting into the administrative code a requirement that we receive a matrix like that in the agenda item summary report so that we can see old contracts line by line compared to the new contracts.
Will of the board.
So you don't need a vote, though, right? We just need consensus to direct staff that.
Consensus at this time, and then when we bring it back, it should require a vote. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Greenwell, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. In the future, I think we always learn, unfortunately, with these disasters, we learn a little bit from everyone. I would like to just be on record saying that in the future of contracts that we do with these companies, that there is some kind of requirement that at least a percentage of the local companies are from the state of Florida that do some of the work. I think that should be in our future contracts. What percentage that is obviously needs to be negotiated and discussed, but I think it would be important to the state of Florida that we offer some of this type of work to local businesses. I'd just like to be on record saying that.
So we currently do like a local preference bidding process. I forgot, is it 5 points? Is it 3 points for local bidding? Is it based upon the county and the state? I don't know if it's Pete or who wants to address that, but there is, we can get staff that information for you though. On all the contracts, it's a local bidding process for that. Okay. Commissioner Hammond, did you have anything else?
No, sir. Thank you for the consensus. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Greenwald, did you have a commissioner item?
No, I do not.
Okay. Committee appointments, Commissioner Wayne.
Yes, I have 4. 2 are new, Jared Pennis for roadway landscape as well as land development. And then I have 2 reappointments, one Jan Bouster and Eric Seavey for bicycle pedestrian.
Second. And any public comment on that? Any objection? Motion carries. Commissioner Sandelli.
I've got 4. I've got a new appointment, Jared Prentice for Parks and Rec Services. A reappointment, Sawyer Smith for Classic. Reappointment, Stephen Pell, Board of Adjustments and Appeals. And a reappointment for Board of Adjustment and Appeals, William Barnes.
Second.
We have a second. Any public comment on that? Any objection from the board? No objection, motion carries. I have 2. I'm going to need a motion and a second to run in for reappointment of Class Act and then reappointment of Michael Kuhn of Whiskey Creek Club Estates.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any public comment? Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Commissioner Hammond?
I have no appointments today.
Commissioner Greenwell?
I have no appointments.
Oh, okay. County Manager?
Yeah, nothing further
Roger.
today, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We'll be preparing for the workshop on debris.
Thank you. And Roger, thank you and all your staff. Roger, this is more than 20 days for you because you were out at EOC 2 days before the storm happened. And thank you for your leadership and all your management team for getting us through this storm. I mean, you guys have been amazing. My colleagues, again, thank you for being out at EOC every day and being everywhere throughout the county. You know, we're on this together. And that's the great thing about our jobs. We're throughout the county. I don't care if it's on Sandoval, if we're in Cape Coral, and Fort Myers, we're all there together supporting each other. And your staff's been there every way. And they're still out there now putting signs back in the ground and still taking care of people. So thank you again for all your staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there are resources that came from all over the state of Florida, from so many of the counties around the state who showed up to help. We could not have sustained this effort for the last 20 days or so without the help of the other county emergency management agencies, the fire rescue organizations, the federal government, the state of Florida, and all the resources that were brought to bear on this. And to your point, Mr. Chair, really a special thank you to the senior team and the leadership that they provided out at the EOC throughout this event so far, and to all the county employees who have come together as one organization. Many of them working outside their own areas of expertise, working long hours and for the benefit of the community. So thank you to all.
Like you said, Roger, some of us been through a lot of hurricanes. This is 16 for me, my 38 years of public safety service and now elected, and it's something I've never seen before. And this hurricane is so much local people working together between the local government, state, and federal. The local and federal government to see working together. We all heard the president, we all heard the governor compliment each other. It's just so nice to see when we're in need like that, they're out there working together, and we see the results of it. I mean, I was crystal clear with that president. I told him we need resources, we need these generators, we need this FEMA reimbursement, and we don't need you to leave us after the photo ops. And so it's great. We're going to continue to have that service between the state and local governments, but it's all 5 of us working together. I think this has really been a great asset too, that is paying off. So again, thank you. And Richard, your team too for being there.
Thank you, sir.
Nothing like a bunch of attorneys running around EOC signing documents. So, Richard, do you have anything for us?
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 items for your consideration, if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
The first deals with the states of local emergency. Commissioners, under state law, those are for 7-day increments. We declared on a Monday. Therefore, we would respectfully request the board authorize the chairman to execute future states of local emergencies. We will bring them back before you once executed for ratification. And then the second item is the termination of the existing curfew that's currently in effect for both Pine Island and Captiva. We would respectfully request they be repealed, and if you're so inclined, one motion as to both would be sufficient.
I'll make the motion as outlined by our county attorney.
Second. We have a second. Any public comment on that? Come back board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Okay, great. This time we'll go public presentation, matter of concerned citizens. We have a few cards. The first one, I believe it's Michael Slains, or Slains Michael. Did you fill a card out, sir? And after him, Mark Charles, after the first gentleman. Good morning. Just state your name for the record. Thank you.
Microphone is here.
Yeah, you don't have to touch it. It's already there. It's already on.
Oh, good morning. I know it's rough on everyone, but the devil is at work, and I know even the judges and everyone else is in a lot of trouble with these times right here. These are speaking of Revelation times, and I understand. I know it's rough. I've been out there now, and I know it's tough for the jails. The jails take you in like open up, and certain things happen, and even though they think of the homeless as, you know, being out there, it's still rough on everyone. I feel like sometimes just like you know, maybe a miserish basic store owner that's you know, trying to get more food, and the microwave just goes off like that. But I've been out there now, and these are the times where they should be helping. Is this?
We can
You
hear you.
don't have
We
to
can
touch
hear
it.
you. Yeah,
you don't have to touch it.
sound good. We hear you.
These are the times where they should be helping everyone, and you know, all I can say is I'm hoping that things can't get no worse, but only can get better, because this is definitely times where, you know, agencies and Social Security and places like that should be, you know, taking in people with open arms. I really don't I really don't know how I feel each day, but you know, I was lucky to be inside during the weather, and you know, the way how the leaves look, I could have been like a walking one piece of spider out there. But I thank you, gentlemen, for listening to me, and that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you. Next speaker is Mark Charles. After Mark, Richard Dirtling. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for being patient.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. I'm bringing something before the council today because we're in great demand and great need right now for a lot of help. Okay, mainly because of what we've all been talking about, Hurricane Ian. I've been a contractor with Lee County for 39 years. I don't think this is going to continue because of one reason, and this might be above you guys, might be regulated through state, but there's a great concern here, is that when I renewed, it was done for me by the county. When it was renewed, my contractor license this year, it said only till June, and then you're done. Okay, there's two concerns. One for myself is because I have a few more years that I would still like to do this, okay? The other is for all the people that have already been calling me after this aftermath of Ian, literally over 500 plus, okay? If I cannot be allowed to pull permits, then this work cannot get done. This wouldn't just involve myself, this would involve the whole. What I am an aluminum specialty contractor with concrete, okay? I'm probably asking that something could be done here so that this work could be achieved. Because I don't know how this happened, how it came through. I am a state registered contractor. This is the testing and the licensing that I took, okay? But all of a sudden now it's like, well, you need to be state certified.
Mark, if I could, let me help you real quick. So I want to have Mark Mora and Sean McNulty here talk to you after you leave the podium here, because we took some action a few months ago because we were preempted by the state last year.
Right.
We're working with them to extend that, but maybe Mark and Sean can talk to you and give you some information about that.
Okay.
Great.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just hang out in the back of the room there for next, Richard Durling.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Richard Durling. I'm the owner and president of Marvin Homes. I'm also a past president of the Cape Coral Construction Industry Association, the Lee Building Industry Association, and the Florida Home Builders Association. I'm speaking on behalf of those associations, the construction industry at large, and the citizens of Lee County. We have been impacted unimaginably with a catastrophic storm, and it has impacted our county and our citizens severely. We've been told that 18,000 structures have been found to be either destroyed or substantially damaged by Hurricane Ian, with 5,000 of those being classified as destroyed. We must now work on the recovery. FEMA rules and regulations, though specific, do allow some flexibility for property owners to make repairs under what's known as the 50% rule. For those who do not know what the 50% rule is, very simply, this allows for repairs and reconstruction of affected structures up to 50% of the market value of the structure in question. The cost of the work may not exceed 50% figure. If the figure exceeds 50%, then the structure would need to be repaired or reconstructed to all current building codes, including elevating the structure to the required elevations. Looking at other municipalities in Southwest Florida and how their ordinances are written to address the recovery after a storm and the 50% rule, we have found that Lee County is lacking in the following. Specific items of concern that vary from the neighboring jurisdictions are, first, an additional percentage above market value to allow for the discrepancy between the assessed and market value and for inflation. This is referred to in FEMA publications as adjusted asset value. Most municipalities allow an additional 30%. We would respectfully request 40% since inflation over the last year alone is close to 9%. One additional point, FEMA does recognize replacement cost value as a method of estimating market value. Second, the cumulative total to be reduced from 5 years. Most municipalities, a cumulative total is 1 year. Collier County is from permit to permit. We would respectfully request permit to permit. Lastly, permits issued to hardened structures not to be included in the cumulative total. Owners that have made the effort to harden their property to protect against storms, like installing impact windows and doors, or those homeowners who were forced to re-roof a home to obtain a mortgage should not be penalized.
Richard, I'm sorry, but your time's out. We got to be fair. We get the same amount of time.
Yep.
We hear you. I see Phil here too. Is he Phil speaking too, or?
I don't know if Philip's going to be speaking or not, but obviously we'd like action on our ordinances that deal with this issue as timely
We'll be
as
talking about that in the future. Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? I have no other cards. We'll come back to the board. Any discussion or closing remarks? Richard, Roger, do you have anything else to say? Okay, thank you. We will be adjourned. Thank you.